Welcome to our discussion on two-party domination in U.S. politics. Since the ratification of the Constitution in 1787, the United States has had a two-party system for all but about 30 years in total. This historical record stands in marked contrast to the experience of the many nations that have third parties. A third party is a political party organized as opposition or an alternative to the existing parties in a two-party system. Many countries even have multi-party systems. The United States two-party system has had two contradictory influences on people's civic engagement. On the one hand, the dominance of only two strong political parties through most of American history has made it easy for individuals to find avenues for becoming civically engaged. Further, at various historical points, political parties have worked for the outright extension of political rights to groups that were excluded, although often with the foremost aim of bolstering their core supporters. On the other hand, the dominance of just two political parties that tend to be ideologically moderate discourages the political participation of some people, particularly those who are strongly ideological. Although the grip of the United States two-party system is frustrating to people who support a greater diversity of parties, the reason for the two-party systems are numerous and difficult. Historically, many issues in the United States have been dualist or two-sided. For example, the debate over ratification of the U.S. Constitution found people with two basic opinions. On one side, the Federalists supported ratification of the Constitution, which created a federal government that separated powers among three branches and shared power with state governments. They were opposed by the Anti-Federalists, who campaigned against ratification of the Constitution, supported stronger states' rights, and wanted to see states and individuals enjoy greater protections. This split provided the initial structure for the two-party system, and a multitude of issues followed that format. Political scientists Seymour Martin Lipset and Stein Rokon asserted that the dualist nature of voter alignments or cleavages shapes how political parties form. In particular, these alignments or cleavages concern the character of the national fabric. For example, should religious ideals or secular notions prevail? And they are determined by function, business versus agrarian interests, for example. These cleavages shaped party formation during the 19th century, when the dualist nature of conflict continued to be in evidence in public affairs. Some states wanted slavery. Other states opposed the peculiar institution of human bondage. In some states, commercial and industrial interests dominated. In other states, agricultural interests held the reins of power. Immigrants, often Catholics, controlled the politics of some states, whereas native-born Protestant held sway in others. By the 20th century, the dualist conflict had become more ideological. Some Americans agreed with President FDR's plan to help lift the country out of the Great Depression by significantly increasing the role of government in people's everyday lives. Others opposed this unprecedented expansion of the federal government's power. In later decades, debates over civil rights and women's rights demonstrated the continued dualist nature of conflict in American society and culture. In almost all U.S. elections, the person with the most votes wins. If a competitor gets just one vote fewer than the victor, he or she wins nothing. If a third party garners a significant proportion of the vote in congressional elections nationwide but does not win the most votes in any given district, the party will not win any seats in Congress. Compare the winner-take-all system with the proportional representation system found in many nations. In a proportional representation system, political parties win the number of parliamentary seats equal to the percentage of the vote each party receives. So, for example, if the Green Party were to capture 9% of the vote in a country's election, it would get 9 seats in a 100-member parliament. In a proportional representation system, the 19% of the vote that Reform Party candidate Ross Perot won in the 1992 U.S. presidential election would have given the Reform Party about 85 seats in the House of Representatives. In nations with proportional representation, third parties, which we consider in more detail later in the chapter, are encouraged because such parties can win a few seats in the legislature and use them to further their cause and broaden their support. In addition, in proportional representation systems, third parties sometimes form a coalition or working union with a larger party so that the two together can control a majority of a legislature. And so, for example, the Green Party, then that won 9 seats in Parliament in the example mentioned above, might form a coalition with another party that had received 42% of the vote, together forming a majority government. In this way, a third party can get members appointed to key positions as a reward for forming the coalition. Consequently, societies with proportional representation systems can sometimes be more inclusive of differing points of view because even those winning a small percentage of the vote achieve representation, and that representation can be pivotal in the formation of coalitions. Another reason that the two-party system dominates in the United States is that party identification, like ideology, values, and religious beliefs, is an attribute that often passes down from one generation to the next. Hence, many an individual is likely to be a Democrat or a Republican because his or her parents were one or the other. Many people first learn about government and politics at home. Around the dinner table, a child may have heard her parents rail against Barack Obama's health care proposal or criticize George W. Bush's Iraq policy. Having become socialized to their household's political culture, children are likely to mimic their parents' views. Even children who do not share their parents' political outlook or who grow apart from it over time, as commonly occurs during the college years, have been socialized to the legitimacy of the two-party system, unless, of course, their parents routinely criticized both Democrats and Republicans or voiced dissatisfaction with the two-party system. At both the federal and the state level in the United States, election laws benefit the two major parties because they are usually written by members of one of those parties. Although some local governments mandate nonpartisan elections in most cities and towns, getting on the ballot typically means simply winning the party's nomination and collecting a state-specified number of signatures of registered party members on a nominating petition. Usually, the party organization will circulate this petition for a candidate. Third parties have a much steeper climb to get their candidates in office. In the 2008 presidential election, candidate Ralph Nader, who ran as an independent, had difficulty just getting his name on the ballot in some states. Scholars of civic engagement point to the structural impediments to the information of third parties as key to the low level of civic engagement on the part of individuals who are dissatisfied with the two-party system. Facing seemingly insurmountable structural obstacles to the formation of successful third parties, some Americans shy away from political engagement.